Swiss Foundation for Mine Action has been working on the issue of explosive ordnance in the southern Philippines since the early 2000s. In 2010, FSD was included as a technical partner in the Comprehensive Agreement on Bangsamoro to provide advice and assistance in mine action to the parties on the peace agreement in support of normalization in Mindanao. Educating communities about the risks from explosive ordnance, surveying known items and assisting in their clearance plays a critical role in building security and a lasting peace. It's also at the heart of FSD's mandate.
I heard the explosion and I rushed back to my home, and I saw my son lying down there on the ground, not moving. My husband found the item from the river, and he even tried to dismantle it himself one time. When I saw my son, I didn't know if he is alive or dead at that moment. He was covered in blood and his hand was no longer there. I gave him to my husband to rush him to the hospital. I only have one child. It was so hard to see this and to carry on now. I asked my husband if our son was still alive, and he said, "No, he's already dead." I looked at my son and tried to understand what kind of thing exploded to kill him, that even our television was destroyed and our house damaged even to the roof. What is this thing? At first, we didn't know what had exploded. My cousin who found it had kept it for many months. I saw that the children were often playing with this item, but we didn't even know what it was.
That ordnance sets off accidentally because of the mishandling, and the children were trying to play with it. This community needs to be oriented with explosive ordnance. We need bomb awareness like that for them to get aware that explosives is a lethal material.
UXO is an indiscriminate item, it's designed to kill, maim or injure, and it's totally indiscriminate. So when individuals find UXO, there's a potential that they're going to move it, and that can result in death or injury. Also, with regards to development, farmers, for example, they discover UXO on their rice fields or their banana plantations. It means that they don't have access to those areas, so therefore they're losing their livelihood.
Decades of armed conflict between separatists in Muslim areas of Mindanao and the government of the Philippines has left a widespread and deadly legacy of explosive ordnance. These remnants of war continue to undermine the peace process and devastate lives and livelihoods. For the Philippines national government, the Bangsamoro's local government, and the region's diverse population, the deadly legacy of explosive ordnance from recent fighting, and some even from the Second World War, as well as improvised explosive devices or IEDs, also continues to hinder development.
Unexploded ordnances are a major issue in the Bangsamoro because we've been in war for more than 40 years. And from the late 1960s to the 1970s, throughout the 2000 war, there was no serious effort to address unexploded ordinances over the years. And so you can just imagine communities who've been heavily bombarded and a lot of unexploded ordinances are there and are now returning to these communities. This poses a lot of danger to civilians, so we need to address that.
Our municipality, a lot of vintage bomb that was left behind by the previous conflict, especially during the World War II, the so-called Ilaga era or martial law time. No? Our municipality was being part of that tragedy, and there are really a lot of unexplosive a vintage bomb or device that was left in our municipality.
Uncleared explosive ordnance represents a significant risk to the civilian population, particularly children. But in a context where there is still armed conflict, explosive ordnance can be repurposed into new weapons, contributing to ongoing insecurity. It's essential these items are safely destroyed.
It's really important that we have an effective and efficient clearance response. As I was saying, we go out and we survey items. We now have over 300 items that are recorded on the database. The importance of removing those items of explosive ordnance is that they are being recycled, repurposed into improvised explosive devices. So every item that's out there in the community potentially could be turned into an improvised explosive device. The level of insurgency and fighting here is much reduced due to the peace process, but there are still some small but active Islamist groups, some associated with Islamic State. There's still a communist group here, and these guys are using improvised explosive devices, and they're getting the explosive from the uncleared old explosive ordnance that's out on the ground. So it's really, really important that we get out there and get these items cleared to prevent them from becoming IEDs. And IEDs are not just being used by those insurgent groups, they're also being used in clan warfare, what they call REDO here, these revenge attacks. They're used in political violence. So it's really, really important that we get rid of those items.
Immediately after the 2017 siege, there were a number of reports of unexploded ordnances and unexploded improvised explosive devices that were scattered around the main affected area in Marawi City. In the provinces, our usual encounters with remnants of the Mauti ISIS-inspired group, they're still using improvised explosive devices. Can be hazardous not only to our personnel, to the government forces, but also to the civilian populace who go up in the mountains to hunt, to do their traditional living from the natural resources that's available in the mountains.
Swiss Foundation for Mine Action is the only international humanitarian mine action organisation working in Philippines and in Mindanao. We're the only agency out there providing explosive ordnance risk education, doing non-technical survey, and also liaising with the military and the police EOD teams on facilitation of clearance.
FSD's work is an integral part of the peace agreement. And we're not just talking about the implementation of the peace agreement, but we're also talking about the impact, what impact FSD has with all of its works on the ground, particularly on the community, of addressing the problems concerning unexploded ordnance and landmines. So this must be continued because of its significant effects in the improvement of the peace and order and security on the ground, as well as in the implementation of the peace agreement.
I think the FSD work is highly critical, especially in this region. FSD assumes the role of de facto coordinator for mine action in the Bangsamoro region, and the initiatives of FSD to provide correct information on the risk of unexploded ordnance to all the communities and VARM is, I think, very important for children and adults to have a better access to information and how do they prevent risk of possible incidents of unexploded ordnance. Where do they report in cases where these children and even the community people come across with an exploded ordnance? So those are, for me, life-saving information, and I think that's very important in our context here in the Bangsamoro region.
The biggest problem that we face is trust. You have to remember that this area has suffered conflict for the last 40 years or so. And there is an element of mistrust amongst the communities, amongst the security forces and other organizations. So gaining trust of the people is the most important challenge that we face at the moment. And thankfully, due to FSD's work and what we do, and the long period of time that we've been working in the BAM region, we already have that trust from the communities, from the police, from the army, so we can be a conduit to assist in moving the peace process further on down the line.
Well, of course, FSD has the trust and respect of the parties. And in our way of dealing things with the complexity of the peace process, FSD has earned the trust and goodwill from both the government of the Philippines and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. It's not easy to achieve that level of trust from the parties, but because of its credibility, because of its accomplishments, because of its intent to really help in the meaningful transformation of the Bangsamoro communities, I believe that FSD achieved that level of trust from the parties. And in terms of credibility, it is the only accredited organization right now to do the program under the peace agreement on addressing unexploded ordnance and landmines.
With a properly coordinated response and adequate resources, FSD can continue responding to ordnance-affected communities and support the peace process. It's a collaborative effort with its partners in government and civil society, but it's one that will save lives and improve livelihoods for generations to come.
To the donors, and to our possible partners who want to accompany us in the implementation of the peace agreement, for your support in helping the advocacy and the program of FSD in Mindanao, as you are not only helping achieve and realize the implementation of the Bangsamoro peace process and the agreement, but also helping and improving the lives of the peoples and the community towards achieving lasting peace in this region.
So there's a big problem, but we can respond to it, and if we had appropriate levels of resources, if we can do survey across the whole of Mindanao, we can then task clearance assets to go out and remove these items and make a massive difference to the communities here.